I will introduce our presenter. Distinguished Toastmaster Gina Cook has been a Toastmasters for over 30 years in almost everything leadership role available. I can attest that Gina is one of the most devoted members of the district, and I have the privilege of meeting her as one of the first people that I met when I was visiting clubs before I joined Toastmasters, and she was in the first club that I visited before I joined. Tonight, Gina will discuss some of the areas of concern about being a coach. So please welcome Gina Cook.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And I am very excited to be here to do this webinar. As I mentioned to Shirley and a couple other people, this is the first time I'm doing a webinar, so I hope that it comes across well. The basic format for the webinar is that I'm going to go through some of the regulations and what you need to do as a coach and what my experience has been to be a successful coach. If there are questions in the middle of the discussion, you can please ask. Otherwise, I am going to leave time at the end for question and answer. So we'll get started just with first the regulations. The club president must request you as a club coach through either the district director or the club growth director, and they send that request to TI for you to become a club coach. If you are interested in joining that specific club, you need to ensure and wait for that request to get through and for TI to post your name as a club coach before you join the club. Otherwise, you will not get credit as a club coach. The club needs to be 12 members or less at the time that you have been assigned as a coach. That means that if they have renewed at their mid-year and they still show 13 members on the books, but it is September and you know that there's only going to be 8 that are renewing, you still need to wait until October 1st when that renewal has gone through, if that makes sense. 2 coaches can actually be assigned to a single club, which can be a real benefit for you because then it doesn't all that stress doesn't fall on your shoulders, that you can share the ideas as well as share the attendance with the club. That way you can attend as many meetings as you can without having to attend every single one yourself, which can be a benefit if you've got enough club coaches to go around. The appointment can last up to 2 years and would end on June 30th. If the club gets a distinguished status during that time, then you're good. You have made your goal and you are successful. If the distinguished status has not been reached, even though your membership has gone above the numbers that you need it to be, then you actually can renew for an additional year that would end again June 30th. And that appointment would need to be sent by the district director before August 31st. So those are some of the quick regulations. Does anyone have any questions on that part so far? Seeing none, I will move on to the second question, which...
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Heather.
I just took me a while to get unmuted here.
That's okay.
When you said that it has to be submitted by August 31st, you mean for the renewal of one? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, the reappointments.
Okay, and a point that I think is worthwhile making about the first year is, which I didn't discover until just recently, is that your first year always ends on June 30th. Right. So if you were appointed on June 1st,
you've got 30 days.
30 days, and then you get reappointed. So you really only, in that case, have a year and a month instead of 2 years. I thought it went 2 years from when you were appointed, but as I say, I recently found that was not the case.
Okay. That's good to know. In the manual, it talks about appointments lasting for 2 years and ending on June 30th.
Yes.
So that probably includes the reappointment time.
Yeah, it's just their definition of what the first year is what I don't think is clear.
That's great to know. Thank you, Heather, for that. So to be a successful coach, you need to build rapport with the club members and the leaders as well. And that is through your good nature, your wisdom, being able to sit down with them and actually talk with them. So being a Toastmaster and talking to other Toastmasters is not usually a big problem, but this is where you actually need to bring that enthusiasm, your camaraderie to a meeting, and even beyond that to executive meetings, and sit down with the members, sit down with the club executive, and actually talk to them and get them enthusiastic about the opportunities and the responsibilities in the future of the club. It really helps if you've got already a couple of enthusiastic members in the club that want that club to work and be successful, because that just brings it a little bit easier for you. What you need to do as a club coach when you first go in is assess the club environment. It'd be like doing a moments of truth, but from your own perspective. Take a look at what they are doing well, what areas you would suggest that they try working on, and being able to recommend best practices for the success of the club. Taking a look at the club success plan and perhaps working with the club leaders to create or develop a new club success plan. Perhaps it hasn't been done for a while, because usually when the idea of a club coach is needed, there's a lot of things that get pushed aside and get put onto the back burner, and one of them is usually the club success plan. For you as a club coach, understanding the DCP can be really helpful, because many of the members, especially the executive that go into the Toastmasters International website, don't necessarily understand how the Distinguished Club program works. And so to be able to encourage the club to strive to use it, it really helps if you understand what it is you're trying to encourage them to use. The club coach can use the DCP to see how the club has worked in the past and how they've done in terms of their not just their distinguished status, but how many educational awards were presented during the year, what their membership was like. Because you can go back a few years and take a look at the DCP to see what the status had been. And that can really help you establish, is it something that membership has been up and down for many, many years, or has it been very steady and then suddenly there's been a big slump? So this gives you background, which is very helpful. And the executive and members, unless they are long-term, may not realize that this has been the status of the club. One of the things to note, I think I was just trying to mention earlier, but that for successful credit as a club coach, you will not receive it until after the year-end results are finalized at World Headquarters, which means not just the numbers that show up on June 30th, but that everything that's taken into account after that date that goes on to June 30th will kind of all add together, and the year-end result for that club, if they are distinguished, then you get your credit. So if you're looking at getting your club coach status as of June 30th, that may be a little bit difficult. I don't think that they get it done in time for that, but that's just my understanding of how it works. Any questions on that?
I think Gina, for this year they are going to.
I hope so, because they've
award
put
it because
extra credits there.
It's the same as for this year for a one-time basis. Like it used to be, it's always been that you can't submit your officer service. Like you sort of can't submit a DTM if you need that officer service until July 1st, because it has to be the complete year. They're allowing it to be submitted on June 30th this year on a one-time thing. So I think they're going to do the same type of thing with Club Coach too.
And I think that's just for the legacy program then.
Right, just for the legacy program, and it's a one-off type situation. It's just for this year to allow people to get that credit.
Yeah, I think that they're doing some extra strides to be able to help people get their DTM if they are going for it over the legacy system this year.
Yeah.
So, okay, are there any other questions on that aspect so far? No? Alrighty. Then we can get into what my experience has been. What I have found works really well is you're going into a club that may know you a little bit. After all, the club president has had to sign off and request you to come in as a coach, but you are going to be working with the team. The big thing is you are not taking over the club and doing the work. You're still needing to get them to do the work, because they are the members are the ones that are learning from this, from your experience. So you are basically coming in as a counselor. You're a source of knowledge and ideas. And as a coach, you're going to have some fresh ideas, some outside views as to what is going on in the club. And that's going to be very helpful to the members, because they will see it from the inside, and your outside view can be very different from what they have been seeing. A big thing I found is be patient. There's a lot of changes that you may see through your own leadership skills, but it's going to take time. And some things will take longer to put into action than other ideas that you may have. So you have to be very patient and not try and get everything fixed all at the same time. Everything does take time, and you have to prioritize what things can be done immediately, what ideas can be done next week, next month, in 2 months, and try not overwhelming the executive and the members that are there so that they can start dealing with your ideas. This is where your diplomacy skills or your diplomatic skills will come in, because there may be some egos at the club, and you can't not bring in your ego on top of that. You have to be very diplomatic and very patient to be able to deal with that and to make it a positive experience for them. As the club coach, set a good example. Be able to show up on time, show up to every meeting that you can, participate, talk to the guests, talk to the members, and it gets them thinking that this is the right thing to do, because they're going to try and emulate you and learn from you. So you are their role model at this point going in. So be the good example that you are. Kind of do your A game. I mentioned about guiding the members and not doing their job, but meet with the executive. Find out what they are doing now. Find out what issues and problems that they are having so that you can kind of help them work through it. Build a rapport. Get to know the other members. Sit down with them, perhaps during the break, before the meeting, after the meeting, and talk to them and find out a little bit more about them and why they joined Toastmasters in the first place. Before you even start making any changes or even being assigned as a coach, get their buy-in and support, because they are the ones who, it's their club. You're coming in as an outsider. You bring great ideas, but unless you have their buy-in and support, those ideas are not going to get implemented, because you need to get the buy-in and support of not just the executive, but the members as well. And this is the one thing that I've done over the years, is be able to talk to the members beforehand, to be able to say, listen, I've got good ideas. I've got some thoughts of what we might be able to do to build up the membership, to get participation going, but I need your support in it. And usually that really does help. Once you get the acknowledgement from the district director or the club growth director in sending in your request from the president, start participating. Start attending the meetings, start talking to the club executives, meet with them. Have the club executive have a an executive meeting and sit down with them and talk about what's going on, what you see in the future. Basically take a look both at the DCP but through the members themselves as to what's going on in the club. Analyze the problems that they see, problems that perhaps you see, and ideas on how it can be turned around. The hard part is to be objective when you are recommending solutions. So that means that when you've got ideas, to be able to make suggestions, to be able to say, well, here are some options, and allow the club members to help figure out what the best options might be. Of course, giving them only the good options and not the options that you know are not going to work is what you really want to be doing. Just like an evaluation, the club doesn't necessarily have to take your advice. So if you advise them to do A, B, and C, they may look at it and go, well, we don't want to do A. It could be too much work, or for whatever reason, they don't do A, but they're willing to do B and C. That does happen. And you may come back in a future, a few months from now, and revisit the option A that you gave them to see if they are willing to take that advice now. Because sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, it takes time and we have to be patient. So as a club coach, you stick around to help implement your recommendations and help the club make and become successful. The idea there is you don't just run in and run out again. As a club coach, you want to be there. You're going to be helping them, whether it is every meeting, every other meeting, whether you are calling in and doing your club coach by Skype, being a virtual coach. Those are all very good possibilities. The point is you need to be in connection with the members, with the club, so that A, they see you, B, they can acknowledge and give you that level of respect that you are earning by working with them. Sometimes I found that when I go into a club meeting that their membership has gone from 20 members down to 8 members, they still have a full roster on the meeting rolls. And so it makes it much easier at the point where they don't have as many members to actually pare down the meeting rolls so that the existing members are not so overwhelmed by doing double, triple, quadruple duty. Instead, have the Toastmaster, the speakers, the evaluators, table topics, general evaluator, grammarian, timer. Those are the major ones. And sometimes we do double duty on a timer and something else. But if you've got 8 members, I've just gone through 7 roles. So that means that one person doing each role. Maybe this week, if somebody else shows up, hey, they could do counter. If there's not somebody there, then we don't do it this week. Or perhaps the grammarian doubles up a little bit and does and grammarian role. So those are a couple different ideas of just trying to pare down to the minimum. And as people join the club and go from guest to prospect to member, then you can start adding in the meeting roles again until you're back to a full complement that the club is interested in. Discuss different options of publicity to get guests to come into the meeting, because I find that once the guests are there, then they many times are very interested in joining the club, as long as it is a solid and good club and interesting to be there. Getting them to the meeting can be very difficult. A lot of times people come to meetings through word of mouth. We've learned that in Toastmasters for many, many years. But we also find that we need to have the information of our club out there so that the public sees it. So you've got your free toast host, you've got Kijiji ads, you've got newspapers and magazines within your community. You've got Facebook groups that are community-based. You could do open houses and post the posters in libraries and grocery stores. And I could just warn you a little bit about grocery stores. If you've not done it, get the manager's approval before posting anything. Otherwise, it will come down almost immediately. And you don't want to be bothered with the hassle of going in every 5 minutes and putting a new poster up there. You are going to have different attitudes and different ideas in terms of publicity if you've got a corporate setting versus a community setting. The community setting, you can go everywhere. The libraries, the post office, the super boxes where everyone's picking up their mails. But if you have a corporate setting, then you are basically usually stuck within the buildings that the meetings are in, because many of the corporate settings are closed. So the ideas for publicity for those become a little less, but it just means that the posters can be put up in people's cubicles or outside their cubicles, and having the Toastmaster symbol everywhere in the company rather than just one poster in the HR section of the company. As the club coach, being able to teach the members, all of them, not just the executive, on how to close a sale. This is something that probably needs to be a show and tell the first few times, but to be able to have any member talk to any guest and talk about the benefits and encourage them to join their club will go a long way, instead of just you or just the VP membership being able to actually encouraging them to join. You want to ensure that all the officers are trained at both phases of the TLI at the club officer training sessions. Whether they attend the first one, the makeup session, or they have to be trained separately, get them trained. The one thing that we've seen is that a club is more successful when the club officers are actually trained properly, and it makes a big difference. You want to ensure that the membership dues are sent to Toastmasters immediately upon voting a new member in, and also all of the renewals for the membership are paid before the deadline of the end of September and end of March, and gotten to World Headquarters early so that you have less worries that way. Your club officers absolutely need to be elected, and that there should be at least 3 different members that need to be in a role of a president, a secretary, and 1 vice president. If you only have 3 officers, then those are the 3 that must be there as 3 separate people. So you cannot have a president and secretary or president and VP Ed. Like, you can't have just 2 people as an executive. You must have 3 separate people, and they must hold at least those 3 roles. Many times you'll have someone doing multiple roles, but they need to ensure that those 3 are being held by 3 separate people. As a club coach, you are going to be sharing knowledge and, as I said before, leading by example. There's a lot of knowledge that you will be bringing in as a club coach. Your club has probably been successful, or perhaps you've gone through the ups and downs of low membership, and to be able to bring your ideas, your thoughts, your enthusiasm, and that knowledge with you and helping the next club will make a huge difference. The one thing that you do not want is you don't want to become indispensable. The club members need to continue, or need to be able to continue after you have left their club. They need to be able to continue on with the examples that you left with them. So that way, if you leave the club and the club dies again, that didn't work well. You want to have the club successful year after year after you've left as well, and that will be a real feather in your cap as a club coach. One of the things that I found was to remind all of the members to treat each other with the same care and attention that we would give a guest that comes in for the first time. I know that the idea of going into a club as a longtime member one of the things that we do in our club is we shout out everybody's name as they walk in the door, kind of like the old TV series of Cheers. And it's very heartfelt because people really enjoy that. When I go into a meeting of an existing club and come in as a first-time guest and I don't recognize anyone and I don't get treated, I don't get acknowledged at all, it makes me wonder what they do to first-time non-Toastmasters and wonder if these people would ever come back as a guest if they're not treated well in the first place. So be able to treat your guests well, but be able to treat your members well also. Show recognition for member contributions and achievements. Being able to put photos up on Facebook to be able to say, hey, so-and-so did their icebreaker today, fantastic, or so-and-so finished level 1, level 2, this was our meeting, this is our group selfie, it's everybody that was there, it was a wonderful meeting. Being able to put that information out there ends up making the members feel good about their club. One of the things that we talk about at Stittsville is occasionally when I'm the club chairman and I get up as Toastmaster and I talk about welcome to the club, and I'll say, welcome to Stittsville Toastmasters, the best club in the world. And all the members cheer and shout and yell because it's building the enthusiasm. And then they leave the meeting going, you know, our club is the best. And then they continue with that. Now to get them to participate outside of the club is much easier because they already know they are in a good club. And being able to get them posted on the internet or any of the other social media sites of perhaps receiving the Table Topics trophy or being put into the newspaper, a small article if you can. Putting articles into the newspaper is becoming more difficult, but if you've got a contact, then try to utilize it. Being able to put in sections of the what's happening and that type of area would be very, very useful. One of the things that I like to do fairly soon upon being assigned as a club coach, and that is to put together a speechcraft course as a membership building tool. I know that currently I'm a club coach right now for Canada Toastmasters, and we had pared it down to a 5-week of all of the essential educational topics, having room for the participants, for the new members to give up to 4 speeches during the course. And what we did is if the participants joined, then their icebreaker gets counted towards the pathway program. And there's actual letter from Toastmasters International that you can get them to actually put that together. The thing that most clubs need is continuous publicity. So as I mentioned publicity earlier, doing promotions in local newspapers, in libraries, website, Facebook, flyers, making each one can make a difference. Each one can bring even that one person in to help with building the membership and making the club more successful. I found that every community is different in how they react to various publicity methods. So one group will love open houses, whereas some groups won't bother at all. So you have to understand what the needs of the club in the different communities will be and what their different methods of publicity are needed for that club. Being able to take a look at what they've been doing now and perhaps some things change. When we first started we tried doing open house for one club and it didn't go over at all. No one in the community was interested in an open house. But when we talked about doing something different, that's when we actually had some interest in it. So it's all finding what works for the community in that club or for the company that if it is a corporate club. You want to ensure that the club is working the program. Yeah, every every speech is a manual speech, as they say, or a pathways project. All speeches get proper evaluations. All of the members get speaking opportunities that they are learning and they are growing. Then life is good. You want to be able to make sure that if the club is working the program, then everything should be falling into place much easier. If you decide to join the club, note that it is not mandatory, but you can if you want to. You want to continue to monitor the progress and check the plan that's happening with the executive team, with the district executive team, because you will probably have some sort of check-in with the area director perhaps, or even the district or Toastmasters International to say, how are things going? You are the liaison as well between the district, not taking away from the area director, but because you are working with the club directly, you are going to probably be asked for progress reports on a somewhat regular basis. Ultimately, you are there to help the club rebuild their club, and you're there to help. You need to stress this often to the members and continue to get the buy-in to any changes that you are offering or that you have ideas for. You want to avoid telling them what to do or criticizing them as a club, to gently guide them toward club excellence. Remember that everyone is a volunteer, including you, and you need to get them to work with you so that you can also be successful. And if they are successful, then you will be successful. There are some coach troubleshooting guides from Toastmasters International. I don't know if anyone has seen this form off the TI website. It can be found at toastmasters.org/clubcoachguide. And it is worth taking a look at when you're first starting and perhaps looking at the guide and answering the questions on a perhaps every 2-month basis to see how things are improving. You want to be objective. Be fair, but honest. To use the assessment and see how the areas are improving, and then let the members know what areas you are seeing improving for them. And that, again, will build their enthusiasm about the club. You have the opportunity to ask other Toastmasters from different clubs to come in and take a meeting role so that the current members don't burn out. You can encourage them to come in and give an educational talk, perhaps, or just to give an evaluation, a different evaluation than the voices that they're used to hearing. You can also encourage the existing club executive to go and visit successful clubs that are in your area or in the city and bring their ideas back of what they saw being very successful. A big thing is engaging the guests. Ensure the members talk to the guests. I was at one club meeting going in to help with a club contest, and nobody was talking to the guests. None of the members were talking to them at all, and they sat there and they were kind of looking around. And so as a visiting Toastmaster, we were assigned perhaps as judges, I'm not sure exactly. We went over and started chatting with the guests. And we realized by the end of the evening that the only people that had talked to the guests that night were the visiting Toastmasters. So you want to ensure that you get the members to actually talk to the guests that come out to their club. And again, encouraging them to join. The Club Coach program provides help to get the club back on its feet by finding the root cause and working with the executive in the role of the coach. And your goal, of course, is to have a healthy and self-sustaining club at the end of your tenure as club coach. So let's open it up to question and answers. Daniel?
Sure. I will unmute all of you and feel free to ask questions to Gina. Maybe I will start. I had a question that was asked about 20 minutes ago from Liz. She's asking if a coach can ask for a ALS and DTM in the same form in June.
What I would do is I would do the ALS and DTM and just attach the two together. Because I don't think online they can be done together. But if you sent it in with the paperwork, perhaps it would. Heather, do you have a better idea?
Well, if you have your VPE do it, like they can submit your ALS and it will take about 3 minutes to get confirmation that your ALS has been processed, and then they can submit your DTM. The system has to show the ALS before they can submit it. I would say when I've done it, I've been able to do it just minutes apart. So
Okay.
it's not a huge deal.
Okay, last time I did the ALS, they had some glitch and it took quite a while. But that's a great question.
This time, if you're doing it on June 30th, that could be a different thing, because there's probably a lot of stuff being done on June 30th of 2020.
Yes, there will be. Yes.
Hi, Gina. It's Shirley.
Hi, Shirley.
I have a couple of questions, please.
Sure.
The first one was, you mentioned that some clubs don't respond well to an open house or to doing a open house, and you said that you could do something different. What is the something different that you might suggest in this case?
Well, what you can do are things like instead of an open house, you could do or what we tried to do was a wine and cheese party of a non-alcoholic wine, mind you, and just invite the neighbors. I mean,
like a social event.
Like a social event.
Okay.
One of the things that we did just recently was we went into the grocery store and we set up a fairly decent sized presence, having all of our banners and things around us and lots of handouts and ideas. And we talked to people as they came through and encouraged them to come out, gave them some information and encouraged them to come out and visit the club. And that brought in actually a couple of people.
Excellent. Thanks. My second question, and I'm sure you've come up against this, I know I have in the past, when you have a club that's doing it all right, they're doing the open houses, they're welcoming the guests, they're inviting the guests to come and stay.
Yeah.
But there seems to be some overarching issues with guests wanting to become members, whether it's because of the time of the event or whether it's the agenda of the event. And then there are the longer term members that like it the way it is. They like the time, they like the agenda, and those things seem to be the things that are a problem. And I know there are others on this call that have come up against this as well.
Yeah, I'm actually working right now with the club with they're similar idea, but we're looking at location. I mean, the night seems to work with everybody. People seem to be happy, but the location, although we've been in that location for 25 years, it's gotten darker and scarier because it's inside the woods. And so we're actually taking a look at a different location. But it's, again, getting the club buy-in. If you've got a large majority of the club, of the current members that refuse to make any changes in terms of the timing or the location of the meeting, then that is definitely something that you're going to be stuck with for a while. Because the club executives can only go so far unless they are willing to lose those people that are not willing to move, to be able to sit down with those members to say, what is it about this time, this location that would make it a difference to you if we chose to different time or different location?
Thanks, Gina.
You're welcome. Everyone else is on mute. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Mike.
Gina, it's Mike Cooper from Land Toastmasters. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you for the session, first and foremost. Excellent. I was, I'll say, reintroduced to Toastmasters Nortel, or Toastmasters years ago through
Good at Nortel.
yeah, exactly, through a speechcraft course that Paul Arbour taught.
Okay.
So that's the thread I'd like to pull on. I'm curious about what it would really take. I've never put one on before. I'm not aware of members of our club who have put one on before, but I think that would be a really intriguing idea.
Well, Mike, it's funny you should ask because I'm the speechcraft coordinator for the district.
Bingo.
The idea of a speechcraft course, and it really is laid out within all the manuals that Toastmasters International has. The idea is to do usually about a 6-week course, and it is a membership building type session. Now, I know that they're looking at reworking the speechcraft course for the new pathway system, but in the meantime, what it's set up to do is basically, if you did everything in the book that they want you to do, you would have had the participants do the first 5 speeches of their old competent communicator manual.
Okay.
Within that time frame. What happens is that you can do a speechcraft session with 3 people minimum. You want to publicize it well ahead of time, depending on if you're bringing them into an existing club or if you are starting a club with this session. You can limit the number of people that you have in the course and run the course such that you can get the participants, the existing members or participants, to participate in the speechcraft course as well as these speechcraft participants, which basically could be considered 6-week guests to the club. Now, one of the things that we used to do is to be able to say, you come take the course is $60 for 6 weeks. If you join during the first week, you think, oh my gosh, this is fantastic, I want to be part of the club for the rest of the year, then we would take all the money put together and put it towards the membership fee. If you joined during the year, then we take half of the money. If you join after the session's all over, thank you so much, it's the membership fee. But the point there was that you're not in it, the club's not in it to raise money. Right. They are in it for membership. And the idea is during that 6-week session, you're going to be teaching them how to give an evaluation, how to organize a speech, how to use vocal variety, how to use gestures, how to be the different roles on the agenda, the table topics master, the Toastmaster, to become part of the system. And by the end of usually by the end of the 3rd or 4th week, they are the ones giving the evaluations. They are the ones that are participating fully in the actual Toastmaster program. So what happens, of course, is that you've got productive members if they join.
Exactly.
And so it is a very good membership building program. But there are some clubs that don't want to do the amount of work that it does take to put on a program. Of course, now we know that Speechcraft, being in charge of putting together the Speechcraft course, is in the new pathway system, the same credit you would get as if you were a club sponsor.
Oh, okay. I hadn't worked that far through the pathway system yet, but that's good.
Yeah, good to know.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Okay, anybody else?
I was invited to ask questions.
Absolutely.
I have 2 questions by text.
Oh, please, yes, because they flash by and I can't read it.
Yeah, I'm taking care of that for you.
Perfect, thank you.
One of them from Lisa. She's
Yes.
asking if you have any tips for helping clubs launch or reboot mentoring.
Oh, yes. I'm also a mentor ambassador. I've been on the mentor circle for a while. And what you really want to do is you can take If you've got seasoned members that are still part of the club, fantastic. They usually have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge to help share. And that's one of the big things that as a seasoned member, many of them are usually happy to help share their knowledge because they will be recognized as a mentor. If you don't have a number of experienced members, one of the things that I put into our club was to actually get some of the newer members to mentor some of the seasoned members with the pathway system, because they were learning much more quickly sometimes than some of us seasoned members, and therefore they had more information than we did. And what we did is we actually brought them in, and therefore when they started working with the experienced members, they were getting a really good back and forth of what we knew, we shared information with them, what they knew, they shared with us. And that mentoring collaboration really made a difference in the club. So that's an idea. If your club currently does not have a mentoring program put into place, it is something that you should encourage. Being able to help each other. I mean, we do that now in Toastmasters. We support each other as best we can. And being able to mentor each other, at least for the first few speeches, is super important because it gives the base of that support and that sustainability to the new member. Does that make sense? Lisa? Yes, no, maybe.
You may have been muted again. I had to mute a few people.
Okay, no, Lisa became unmuted.
Thanks, Gina. That helped a lot.
Okay, great. Thanks. Oh, you had another question in text?
Yes, I have another question by text from someone named Utilisateur,
Yes.
whoever that person is. Hi, Gina. How do you promote Easy Speak and Agenda to a club that held their meeting with everything writing on the chalkboard?
Ah. Okay, well, I've never used EasySpeak. I've used the FreeToast host agendas, but most of the agendas that the clubs I work with tend to use are just off of Excel, and we create them ourselves. We have the future agendas go around the room and people sign up, or they go online and sign up in a Dropbox type situation. Otherwise, getting participation in advance is absolutely essential. When you've got a club that doesn't have a whole lot of members, getting them to fill out those major roles so that we know we don't have to stand there at the end of the meeting going, okay, next week, who wants to do a speech, who wants to be evaluated? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good for the club to have that. So you do want some sort of advanced program put together. In terms of Easy Speak or any of the other agenda creation documents, I think that any of them will do a good job of putting the information together. The club just needs to ensure that they have that information put together ahead of time. So whether or not they have the pieces of paper that have people sign up for roles as it's going around the meeting, so that by the end of the meeting, everyone's had the opportunity to take a look at the script and be able to sign up for a role if they know they're going to be there, but not just the next meeting. Have it for 3 or 4 meetings at least in advance. My club has advanced agendas set up until June right now, and many of the speaking spots are already signed in. So it depends on what your club is trying to do in terms of people that are wanting to finish off the legacy system or do their level 1 and level 2 during the year. Now, I think I missed the last part of the question, Daniel. I don't think I answered it.
I think the last part was just how do you involve a club that is used to writing everything on a chalkboard?
You know, writing everything on a chalkboard is not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of people that take a look at that and say, hey, they're being environmentally friendly. They're not using up a whole lot of paper. And I see actually a number of corporate clubs that they will put the agendas up on the screen, and you will see in the background that one TV will have a copy of the agenda over there and another copy over there. Personally, I like paper. I make notes and scribble all over the paper and bring it home. So if they send out the paper ahead of time to format the agenda, then the members could perhaps print off their own if that's what they want, and then they can continue putting it up on a chalkboard. Personally, a chalkboard doesn't look really professional, but if that's what they're going for in terms of trying to be environmentally friendly, then that's one thing we can't really argue against. Perhaps putting together even a nice whiteboard with black lines and having the permanent marker for the different roles might look a little nicer than a chalkboard.
Utilisateur, did we answer your question? Est-ce qu'on a répondu à votre question? Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, he said yes.
Okay, perfect.
I use in my club we have a whiteboard, and I find it very useful for identifying blanks in the agenda. We have the agenda filled in advance, but there's always a few blanks. There are roles available.
Okay.
They're filled at the last minute at the meeting, and we write on the whiteboard who is going to do this role and that role, but just the ones that are blank on the paper.
Okay.
And in my experience, I confirm if you're the Toastmaster in front of the room and you ask who wants to be a Toastmaster, who wants to be grammarian for next week, who wants to be Table Topics Master, you usually get a silence. It can be very hard to get people to raise their hand and say yes.
We call that crickets.
Yeah.
You could hear the crickets.
Yeah, or the fly. And I find it works very well if you don't have too many people in the room, and then you ask each person individually. So Bob, what do you like to do next week? Peter,
yes,
what would you like to do next week?
Absolutely. If you're addressing them personally, it will make a huge difference. And to be able to, one of the roles of Vice President of Education is to talk to each of the members to find out what their goals, what they are wanting to get out of the program. And to be able to say, Daniel, I know that you were wanting to be able to complete 5 speeches before the end of June. Do you want them to be scheduled every other month or every 6 weeks? Which would you prefer? And then you could actually start helping to build that advanced agenda and getting them into the program.
Well, that's a neat idea.
How much time do we have left, Daniel? I think
it's almost 8 p.m., but we don't have a hard limit. So if anyone wants to leave now, you're not restrained. But if you want to ask more questions, you're also welcome, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
I'll excuse myself and say thanks again, Gina.
You're most welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for participating and being coaches and potential coaches.
I will also say thank you, Gina, and thank you, Danielle, and hello to everyone, and hope you have a great evening. Shirley signing off. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gina. Thank you, Danielle. I really learned a lot from this. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you.
Before everyone leaves, I'd like to say a great thank you to Gina for volunteering to do this presentation. I learned a lot myself. I'm sure everyone else thought it was very useful, and I'm really thankful for you doing this presentation tonight.
Okay.
This presentation is recorded. I will provide a link to this presentation. It's probably going to be an audio link. You're a very nice person. It's mostly audio content. The audio file will be smaller.
Okay, that's fine. I know Andrew's got a question before we log off.
Sure, and just wanted to say for the coaches, there will be another roundtable call probably within 2 weeks. I will send an email to all of you about the actual date for the roundtable call. If you were thinking, if you have a case scenario you would like to be discussed, please let me know. If you have ideas for a future workshop, also please let me know. And again, thank you very much, Gina. And at this point, if anyone else has any questions, if you want to leave, you're fine. If you have any questions, you feel free to ask them now.
Andrew?
Yeah, let Andrew go, but then I've got something as well, Jeannie.
Okay. Andrew, you had a question?
Hey, Gina. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask a question.
No problem.
So I've been coaching this club, or trying to, I guess. Technically, I've been coaching them. I've gone out to 3 of their meetings so far.
Okay.
And they haven't had a single guest in the 3 meetings, which is unusual in the club I come from. Maybe that's normal in other clubs, doesn't really matter. But all of kind of this talk of, like, how are they treating guests? What's the quality of the meetings? Well, none of that really matters if they're not getting bodies through the door, right?
Yep.
So I don't really know where to focus my efforts. We had a brief conversation after one of the meetings with one of the gentlemen that's been in the club for a long time. I believe he's on the executive, and my perception was just that they have, at least this gentleman has the mindset that nothing's going to work. Oh, we've tried that. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not, because I was trying to kind of throw suggestions out there. So I don't know if you could give me kind of like 1 or 2 things I could maybe try focusing on, because until there's some bodies through the door, like nothing else really matters, right?
Right. No, and I can appreciate that, because I know that it's that we talked about the continual or continuous publicity, and if the club is not necessarily publicizing itself, then people aren't going to know that it even exists, and so you're not going to get the guests that come through the door. Yeah. So perhaps what they need to do is to put, now are they a community or a corporate club?
Community.
Okay, so perhaps even putting something like a table at the grocery store and publicize their club there, like doing something different than perhaps what they've done in the past, or the same as what they've done in the past, and now it might work. That's the one thing about publicizing an ideas, is that sometimes in a particular situation or a particular time, one thing won't work. A year later, it'll work. So it depends on who's reading it, who's looking at it, right, as to whether or not those people will come out as a guest.
Yeah. Okay, so just keep encouraging them to try different stuff, Absolutely. Basically.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gina.
You're welcome, Andrew. Heather, you had a question as well?
Well, not just a couple of points, but on Andrew's point, I agree with you, Gina. Sometimes, you try things and it doesn't seem to work, and then suddenly it works. Yeah. Sometimes you try things and it works really well. You do it again and you get nothing.
Exactly.
So you just never know. You just have to keep trying.
Yep.
One point on the writing the agenda on the chalkboard, at least they're using an agenda. So
yes, that's a good point, Heather. Yes.
You mentioned about not being able to join until, or don't join until after you have the appointment, because you can't be assigned if you're already a member.
Right.
I would also really encourage people not to join unless you plan to stay with the club, because exactly. All you're doing is you're artificially inflating the numbers, and yeah, they might get distinguished, and then, like, in particularly if there's 2 of you, well, they get distinguished and then you both leave and now they're down 2 members. Mm-hmm. And the other point is, I was working, or 2 of us as club coach for a club that, although they agreed to it, there was some resistance. They're more of a rural club, and it was kind of, well, what do you know? I mean, you don't know our situation. You're coming from the city, and that type of thing.
Right.
But instead of even talking about a lot of that initially, we kind of went in with, we're there to give you guys a break. Yeah. Because, I mean, sometimes we were number 5 and 6 at the meeting. Mm-hmm. Or 6 and 7. So it was, we're just here to fill roles so that, everyone's not so overwhelmed with it. And
Yeah.
by doing that initially, like over time, then they started asking, well, could you give us, could you do a session on this, or could you do the, and they started asking for ideas and us to do particular things and whatnot. So sometimes you can just kind of sneak in, and, you really have to assess the situation. But if there is that resistance, just try doing, as I say, basically just going to meetings until the members do get to know you and you've built that rapport. Then they'll start to accept your ideas.
Yeah. And as I said before, every club is different.
Yeah.
Every club is different. So right now I just started as a club coach with another club here, and I walked in and it's like, yay! It's like our savior's here. Oh my God. Okay, the stress.
Yeah. And you don't know, but with the joining in particular, like, and the point you made, and I think it's such an important one, is that you are not there to do it for them.
Exactly.
You are there to teach them how to do it. Yeah. And like with this club, with the publicity and everything, we said, we cannot do the publicity for you because we don't know the community. We can give you ideas on things that you can do.
Yeah.
But you have to do it. And just far too often I've seen the situation where the club gets up to distinguished, and then a year later they're back to needing a club coach again. And that's not achieving anything for anybody. So
it usually means that the club coach didn't give them the knowledge or didn't pass on that knowledge.
Yeah.
Perhaps the club coach was doing too much.
Yeah. Or the club coach did too much and they artificially inflated the numbers by joining, by giving them a bunch of awards, by getting some friends to join who, again, aren't necessarily going to say, but, I'm going to make sure you get distinguished clubs so that, you've got that credit toward your DTM.
Yeah.
My feeling is that nobody should feel good about getting their DTM that way, but a lot of people don't see it. Doesn't seem to bother them, but but anyway, I just wanted to kind of reinforce those points that you had made on that. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Much appreciated. Is there any other questions? Well, I thank everyone for participating. This has been a true learning experience for me, being that this was the first webinar that I've ever done. All right, well, great. It was great talking to you, Heather, and ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for participating and taking on the role of a club coach or potential coach. I hope that I have given you some encouragement and some ideas that you can use in the future.
Okay, thanks, Gina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you, Danielle.